All right, what is up, folks? Happy Monday. I'm going to start the video with this chart. I want you guys to just look at this and really think about this. So, just one country in West Africa, Nigeria. Nigeria's population is about to reach 240 million. So right now, they're going through a population explosion. Right now, Nigeria is averaging about 7.5 million births per year. By the way, that is constantly going up. Soon it's going to be 8 million, 9 million, 10 million births a year. And look at the number of births in Europe. It's been declining for decades now, ever since the inception of birth control. So yeah, Europe right now, the average birth per year in total for Europe, it's about 6.3 million. So, well, out of that 6.3 million, how many of those are, white babies that's being born in Europe? I would say maybe 4 million. Probably at least one out of every 3 newborns in Europe are not white, right? So how can just one single country in West Africa have more births than all European countries combined? As a matter of fact, let's look at this map, right? This is a map of the global fertility rate by country. And I think it's very obvious. The vast majority of whites and Asians, they have simply stopped having children. Well, and if you look at, which part of the world has the highest birth rates, it's all in sub-Saharan Africa. And if you guys want to ask me, is this a good thing? Well, I would say no. I mentioned before, right? So the replacement level is 2.1 children per woman. And anytime you drift too far away from this to one extreme, for example, South Korea, they're at 0.75 children per woman. At the current trajectory, so yeah, the ethnic South Koreans will become completely extinct within less than 100 years. Yes, that is actually real. And if you look at the other extreme, for example, a country like Nigeria, they're averaging about 5 children per woman. Well, that is simply unsustainable. This is not rocket science. So, in an ideal society, right, you have 2 parents and 2 children. For example, right, if one parent is an engineer, the other parent is the teacher, when these 2 get old, when they retire, their 2 children will replace them in the workforce. And this is a problem, right? When you have 2 parents, if they choose to become dinks, dual income, no kids, or they only have one child, and eventually you create a system. For example, what you guys are seeing in China due to the one-child policy. So you have 4-2-1 system. You have 4 grandparents, 2 parents, and 1 child. But what happens is, when all 4 of these grandparents, when they're retired, and eventually both parents of that only child will be retired. So you have 6 people collecting pension, while there's only 1 child that's going to support, pension of 6 people with his income only. So the tax burden on this kid is going to be absolutely outrageous. This is why so many millennials and Gen Zs are struggling. So this is the 4-2-1 system, right? This is what happens when you have a reverse population pyramid, and the vice versa is also true, right? When you have 2 parents, right? If one parent is a doctor, one parent is an engineer, when they get old, when they retire, and you have 2 kids to replace them in the workforce, you create a perfect balance, right? But what happens is in Nigeria, for every single couple, there's on average 5 children. First of all, how are you going to feed these people? How is the government going to create jobs for all of these people? It's simply impossible. So what's going to end up happening eventually is that a lot of these people in sub-Saharan Africa, right, there's going to be no jobs for them, and there's not going to be enough land, there's not going to be enough crop. In order to feed all of these people, this kind of population explosion is simply unsustainable. And inevitably, what is going to happen is that these people from sub-Saharan Africa, especially from Nigeria, where they're going through this population explosion, they're going to leave by the tens of millions to other countries. So, why are so many people in Asia, why are so many men in Western countries, why are they becoming incels? While in Africa, there's a massive population explosion. Well, here's the brutal reality. So, the more hours you work, the less children you will end up having. Okay, there's 100% concrete proof. The reason why, in areas like sub-Saharan Africa, the women, they're pumping out 5, 6, 7, 8 children because, well, there's so much unemployment. Also, of course, there's no feminism in sub-Saharan Africa. Vast majority of the women, they don't have any rights there. So many of these women, they don't have the option to go to school or actually have a solid career where they can climb the corporate ladder. So the vast majority of them, the only option they're given in life is to get married and pump out as many children as possible. And also think about what has been happening in countries like Japan, in South Korea, in China, in the UK, in France, Australia, United States, and Canada. The economy has been declining like this. It's been happening for a very, very long time now. Let's be honest, Japan peaked in the 1970s and the 1980s. It's been in decline for a very, very long time. China's economy is struggling as well. South Korea's economy is struggling. And in times like these, right, when you have a rampant inflation, when the cost of living is going up like this, right, a lot of people are struggling to survive. So what happens, when you're living in this inflation era? It's very normal. A lot of people, they are forced to pick up a second or even third job. A lot of people, they're forced to work the 996. At this point, it's not an option anymore. Or, because at the end of the day, they have bills to pay. Well, the more hours you work, the more likely you're going to become an incel. There's no doubt about it. And the reason why you're having this population explosion in sub-Saharan Africa is because, well, a lot of those African men and women, they're unemployed. They don't have any jobs, right? So as you guys can see, from the chart, so some of the poorest regions on Earth also have the highest fertility. Well, this is because the vast majority of these men and women, they have absolutely nothing to do. So the end result is that they're going to have a lot of unprotected sex. This is true for any civilization. You have to remember, so before China implemented the one-child policy, right? So China's population in 1950 was about 540 million, and China's population reached 1 billion by 1982. So yeah, it nearly doubled in just 32 years before the one-child policy was put into place. So how did that happen? Well, yes, if you guys are wondering, I've covered this in past videos. Chinese people, for the longest time, right, they have always had these extreme long work hours. They've always had the 996. Well, here's the thing. For the longest time, China had something called arranged marriage. Dating was never a thing. So, it was more of a business, if you guys want to call it that way, right? So it was always arranged by the parents of the both spouses, right? Dating was never ever a thing throughout Chinese history. It only really started in the 1990s as China started to phase out of this arranged marriage thing. But as you guys can see, right, with arranged marriage, right, there was no divorces in China. Ever since China phased out of the arranged marriages, divorce in China have exploded. While divorce rate in my hometown is 75% now. Yeah, China has some of the highest divorce rates in the world now. Higher than Canada, higher than the United States, higher than Australia. Well, yeah, this is what happens when you give people the free choice. That's why the entire dating scene worldwide has been cooked. It's 100% destroyed. It's 100% beyond repair. Also, yeah, if you look at China's 996 work schedule, if you're working 60, 65, 70, 75, or even 80 hours a week, how are you going to have time to meet women? How are you going to have time to go on dates, right? To go to the restaurant, to go to the bar, to go to a club, to go on a skiing trip? How are you supposed to work on your game? How are you supposed to work on your wrist? You can't. That's why way back in the day, dating was never a thing. Marriages are arranged between the parents of both sides. You get married very, very young. You had lots of children, and end of the story. Interestingly enough, you think that's tyrannical. You think that is abusive. You think that's patriarchal. You can call it whatever you want to, but under arranged marriages, there was no divorces in China. When you have this free capitalism, market dating, whatever you want to call it, divorce rates has skyrocketed. And yeah, a lot of Asian women say, oh, the reason why they like Western men is because, well, Asian men, they simply have no game. They say, oh, Western man has more risk. Well, here's the thing, right? If you're someone who works the typical work hours in China, South Korea, or Japan, if you're doing the 996 versus the average Western man who probably works anywhere between 40 to 45 hours a week, well, yeah, if you're constantly stuck at work all the time, how are you going to have time to work on your wrist? And even, once in a while, right, you get your 2 or 3 days off per month. When you do get that one day off after working for 10 or 11 days straight, doing 12-hour shifts, on your day off, you're going to be like this. You're going to be like... Yeah, you're going to feel like passing out all the time. Of course, you're going to be a sore loser. Of course, you're not going to have any risk. How can you work on your charisma when you're working constantly? And, when you only get 2 or 3 days off per month, while these Western men that only works, let's say, from Monday to Friday for 8 or 9 hours a day. And they have all the time in the evenings and on the weekends to go to the bar, to go to the club, to talk to women, to work on their wrists, to build their game so they can become a giga chad. And you can think about it like the chess example I mentioned in my last video. Look at all the chess grandmasters worldwide. So it's very interesting to notice, right? There are virtually no women. And because of this male incel crisis, and I talked about, right, the evidence are overwhelming. China and India both have a massive excess man crisis, right? So any woman, right, any average Indian girl or Chinese girl, they can have unlimited number of guys that's just fighting over them. They can just post a bikini photo and post it on social media and get 250 likes. They have guys that's sliding into their DMs all day. Why would they be focused on some stupid chessboard all the time while the vast majority of these Chinese guys or Indian guys, right? So they don't have that kind of luxury. So instead they have to do something in their free time. So that's why they're willing to grind away for 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, 14 hours every single day at the chessboard. That's how so many of these Indian guys become international chess grandmasters. And the reason why you don't see as many Chinese players for the international chess is, once again, like I said, a lot of Chinese guys, they prefer to play the Chinese chess. But I'm sorry to say, the more you focus on the chess game, the more you try to level up and build your ELO score, the more likely you're going to become an incel. Because in order to master a game like chess, it takes countless hours. I'm not talking about weeks or months. I'm talking about years or decades of practice in order to become a grandmaster. And also, you guys have to remember this. Generally speaking, on average, men are 10 times better at handling rejection versus women. Okay, that's just the reality. Because men are simply used to it. The vast majority of women, right? I'm sure you guys have ran into those cases in real life. You think a girl is possibly interested in you and she's giving you all kinds of signals. And sometimes you guys are so frustrated. You're thinking, why can't this girl, if you think, she's interested in you, why can't she be straight and forward about it? Just tell me that you're into me. But they're giving you all kinds of insane signals. The reason why these women are doing that is because the vast majority of women, they cannot handle rejection. If they ever get rejected by a guy, even if, let's say, if this woman's mid and she's trying to score a guy who is 10 out of 10, top 1% giga chat, if she gets rejected by this guy, she's going to absolutely lose her mind. That's why women, they will try to give you all kinds of crazy signals without actually making a solid move. Well, inevitably, it's the same thing in chess. If you want to grind away, if you want to become an expert level, to become the top 1% player in your country, to become an international chess grandmaster, well, you have to get used to losing. And because that is the only way you can learn, that is the only way you can improve, that is the only way you can get better. And a lot of these Chinese and Indian guys, they're used to being incels. They're used to being rejected, right? They're used to losing. So they will keep grinding away at their chess game. They will lose again and again and again and again and again, until eventually one day, maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years down the road, maybe 15 years down the road, they can eventually become a chess grandmaster. But, if a woman, because the vast majority of the chess players are men, right? If she keeps playing chess, if she keeps grinding away, and let's say if she's losing 70, 80, or 90% of the time to men, at some point she's going to say, okay, you know what? This is it. I'm completely done with chess. I've had enough. And that is why, the vast majority of the chess players are men. And that is also why the vast majority of the grandmasters in chess are men. And you can also look at a country like America. So it's very obvious, right? Which U.S. state has the highest fertility rate? It's the Dakotas, the North and South Dakota. So the fertility rate in the Dakotas is about 2 children per woman. So that is almost at a replacement level. But look at the U.S. states with the lowest fertility rates. It's places like San Francisco, it's places like Chicago, it's places like New York City, it's places like Boston. How come in these mega cities, their birth rates are so low? Well, it's because, well, the job and the real estate market in these mega cities like New York City, it's ultra competitive. And in order to survive, a lot of these people, if you live in Midtown Manhattan, a lot of these people, they're forced to work 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week. The more hours you work, the more likely you're going to become incel, and the less likely you're going to have children. And the evidence are overwhelming if you look at China as well. If you look at the fertility rate in China's capital city, in Beijing, it's 0.6. In Shanghai, the city with the highest GDP in China, the fertility rate is also 0.6 children per woman. Yes, 0.6. Yeah, there's a massive population collapse coming in China. But however, if you look at the rural areas in China, right? So if you look at some rural Chinese peasant who owns a piece of land, he has his own brick house. And the fertility rate in rural China is about 1.5 children per woman. And why is there such a huge contrast? Well, it's because if you live in the capital or if you live in Shanghai, the city with China's highest GDP, the market is ultra competitive, and the vast majority of the people, they have to work insane number of hours. They're constantly working nonstop. Of course, they're not going to have time for children. However, if you're a rural Chinese peasant, you own a piece of a small land, you have a little brick house, all you have to do every single day is just some basic housekeeping, and you go to work on the field for a few hours a day. And so that's why the vast majority of the people who live in the countryside, they're 10 times happier, they're 10 times less stressed out versus the folks who are living in the city. This is true anywhere in the world. And once again, right, a lot of people will get triggered. Yeah, if you look at the United States for the longest time, right now, so for every single ethnic group, I believe with the exception of the Hispanics, so every single ethnic group, the birth rates are going down like this in the United States. But for the longest time period, right, there was a very, very obvious division between all the ethnic groups, right? For the longest time, right, the Hispanics had the highest birth rates in the US, followed by the Black Americans, then the white Americans, then the Asian Americans, right? So once again, that is 100% correlated to the number of hours you're working. Once again, on average, the Hispanics and the Black Americans, they work significantly less hours versus the white Americans. And if you compare the white Americans to the Asian Americans, the white Americans will work significantly less versus the Asian Americans. So basically, it goes something like this, right? If you increase your work hours like this, that means your risk level is going to go down like this. That means that less families, less marriages, less relationships, and less children. Yeah, it's extremely difficult to survive in this world. I did say in previous videos, right, as a man, you have to work extremely hard. You gotta be ready to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week if you want to be successful, if you want to find a wife, if you want to continue your legacy, if you want to build generational wealth. But here's the thing, right, if you work that many hours, yeah, how can you have game? How can you have time to pick up women? How can you find yourself a wife? How can you hope to actually continue your bloodline? How can you hope to build a legacy? Well, that's why for the longest time, up until the 1990s, China has always had arranged marriages, because a true high-value, hardworking man does not have a time for all of these things. He does not have time to play games with these modern women, right? He does not have time to go on dates, to go to these fancy restaurants, to be going to Disneyland, to be going on skating trips in Vail, Colorado. Marriage was arranged by their parents. So yeah, there's really no easy way out of this. And once again, right, so the reason why, the birth rates in sub-Saharan Africa is so high is because, well, yeah, there's a lot of unemployment. A lot of men and women don't have jobs. So instead, they're just popping out babies. There's so much more I want to expand on, but the video is already getting too long. This topic is definitely going to be continued. So I want to thank you guys so much for clicking on this video and watching it all the way until the end. And if you guys have enjoyed the contents of this video, please consider subscribing to this channel, like the video, leave a comment down below, and I will see you guys back on this channel for Wednesday. Thank you guys.